You want to be comfortable and you want to have friends and you want to be like early days, being like short.
In the wild, often phony world of Hollywood, very few stars shine with the genuine, unapologetic brightness of Danny DeVito. For over 5 decades, he's been a constant in our lives, a comedic titan, a brilliant director, and a producer with a knack for picking classics. We know him as Louis De Palma, the loud-mouthed, hot-headed, but somehow lovable taxi dispatcher. We know him as the grotesque, tragic, and unforgettable Penguin. And of course, we know him as the unbelievably depraved Frank Reynolds, a character who's completely redefined comedy for a new generation. We know the roles, we know that infectious laugh, and we know the personality that made him a national treasure. But that's the story you see on screen. Behind the curtain, away from the red carpets and flashing lights, lies a completely different, much tougher story. At 80 years old, Danny DeVito's life isn't just a Hollywood success story. It's a quiet, relentless triumph over incredible hardship. It's a story of a daily, lifelong battle with a painful genetic disorder that should have sidelined him before he ever started. It's the story of a childhood marked by the kind of emotional turmoil that would have broken most people. This is the untold story of the immense struggles Danny DeVito faced, the cruelty he endured from an industry that demanded he change, and the powerful reason he refused to let anyone or anything ever change who he was. Hollywood knows him as a comedic genius, a man whose 4-foot 10-inch frame holds a personality that can fill any stadium. But almost no one knows about the daily battle he fights just to get through the day. Few know about the rare genetic disorder he was diagnosed with as a child, one that affects his bones and causes him constant pain. Few know about the heartbreaking rejection he faced from his own family and the industry he was desperate to join. And very few know about the moment Hollywood gave him a cruel ultimatum: change. Who you are and we'll make you a star. His answer didn't just define his career, it defined the man himself. This is the real story of what happened to Danny DeVito, and it's a story of pain, resilience, and quiet courage you've never heard before. To understand the man Danny DeVito became, you have to go back to where it all started: Asbury Park, New Jersey, in the 1940s. Born on November 17, 1944, Daniel Michael DeVito Jr. entered a world that wasn't exactly the warm Italian-American hug you might picture. His family life was complicated. His mother, Julia, was already 40 and had 2 teenage daughters when Danny arrived, a late-in-life surprise she wasn't quite prepared for. DeVito has spoken about the shadow of that sentiment, the feeling that your very existence was an inconvenience. Even if it later became a source of pride, that emotional complexity was everywhere. His father, Daniel Sr., was a man of contradictions. On one hand, he was a hard-working small business owner, running a candy store, a dry cleaner, and a pool hall to provide for his family. He was a sweet man who took his son to the movies and went fishing with him, moments of connection Danny would cherish forever. But that sweetness could vanish in an instant. Daniel Sr. was an alcoholic. "My father had a drinking problem and was sick in that way," DeVito later recalled. "As soon as he had a drink, he went off the deep end. I felt vulnerable." The family home became unpredictable and scary, a place where fights were common. This turmoil at home was happening as his neighborhood was descending into its own chaos. In the 1950s, drugs like heroin were taking hold in Asbury Park, and violence was always lurking. DeVito saw friends and neighbors fall into addiction, a future he was desperate to avoid. "What we were doing in those days were stolen pharmaceuticals," he admitted, acknowledging the danger that surrounded him. One of his good friends would later die in prison, a stark reminder of the path he could have taken. It all became too much. At just 14 years old, in an incredible act of self-preservation, Danny convinced his parents to send him to Oratory Preparatory School, a Catholic boarding school in Summit, New Jersey. It was an escape, a way out from under the constant threat of his father's drinking and the dangers on the street. But it came with its own problems. At boarding school, his short stature made him an easy target. and he often felt isolated. But it was here, in this solitude, that he started to build the tools that would define his life. He learned that what he lacked in height, he could more than make up for in personality. "You can't just rely on your looks to connect with people," he once shared. "So you learn how to communicate, how to make people laugh and feel at ease." He spent hours talking with his 2 older sisters, who taught him how to talk to and respect women, giving him a surprising confidence. He knew he couldn't compete in slow dances where the height difference was obvious. So, he became the life of the party during the fast songs, using his wit and charm to win everyone over. He was turning a perceived disadvantage into his greatest strength. He was learning to perform, not for an audience, but for his own survival. This painful, complicated childhood didn't break him. It forged an iron will and a deep understanding of people that would one day make him one of the most beloved actors in the world. While Danny was navigating the emotional chaos of his childhood, his body was fighting a silent war. The reason for his short stature wasn't just a quirk of genetics. It was the result of a rare and painful condition known as multiple epiphyseal dysplasia, MD, or Fairbanks disease. This isn't a form of dwarfism, as many people assume. It's a distinct genetic disorder that messes with the development of bone and cartilage, especially at the ends of the long bones in your arms and legs. For someone with MED, the growth plates just don't function properly. This not only leads to a shorter stature, DeVito is about 4 feet 10 inches tall, but it comes with a whole host of other debilitating and painful symptoms. Living with Fairbanks disease means living with chronic pain. The condition often leads to early-onset osteoarthritis, stiff joints, and problems with hips, knees, and ankles. Imagine being a kid and feeling the kind of persistent, aching joint pain that most people don't experience until they're elderly. That was Danny DeVito's reality every single day. For decades, he kept this struggle almost entirely private. In the image-obsessed world of Hollywood, admitting to a chronic health condition, especially one that caused physical pain, was seen as weakness. He worried producers would see him as a liability, someone who couldn't handle the physical demands of acting. So, he buried the pain. He pushed right through it, refusing to let it define him or limit his dreams. While the world saw the energetic, fast-talking comedian behind the scenes, he was enduring a level of physical discomfort few could imagine. The pain was always there, a shadow that followed him through every role, every scene, every take. His co-stars on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia have talked about his incredible professionalism, acting through pain so severe that he would sometimes collapse the moment a scene was finished. His condition also impacted his personal life in hurtful ways, especially when he was young. "I was plagued," he once said about his teenage years. "I couldn't slow dance with the girls I wanted to because my face would be in a spot where I might be thought of as moving too fast." While he says he wasn't overtly bullied, he felt like an easy target and had to develop a thick skin and a sharp wit as a defense. For years, the public just saw him as the little guy, a physical trait that became part of his persona. But the reality was so much more complex. It wasn't just about being short. It was about living in a body that was a source of constant, grinding pain. He once joked about climbing stairs. "I climbed like 1,000,000,000 stairs. It's not like I can take them 2 at a time." We all laugh at the line, but underneath it is the truth of screen time. He was memorable in a film that would go on to sweep the Oscars. It put him on the map. But it was television that made him a household name. In 1978, he auditioned for a new sitcom called Taxi. The role was Louis De Palma, the tyrannical, abrasive, yet weirdly lovable dispatcher for the Sunshine Cab Company. The second he walked into the audition, he was Louis. He famously grabbed the script, glared at the producers, and snarled, "One thing I want to know before we start. Who wrote this shot-tea?" They roared with laughter. He was hired on the spot. Louis. De Palma could have been a one-note villain. He was a petty tyrant who ruled his garage with an iron fist, hurled insults at his drivers, and was obsessed with money. But in DeVito's hands, Louis became something more. He gave the character a vulnerability and a sliver of humanity that made him fascinating. He was a total scumbag, but you couldn't take your eyes off him. For 5 seasons, DeVito stole every scene, turning Louis into one of the most iconic characters in TV history. The role earned him a Golden Globe and an Emmy in 1981, cementing him as a comedic force of nature. Suddenly, the very things Hollywood hated became his trademarks. His short stature, combined with his volcanic energy, created a physical presence that was perfect for comedy. He could be both intimidating and hilarious in the same breath. He wasn't just the little guy anymore. He was a giant of the small screen. Taxi's success opened the door to a film career that showed off his incredible range. He gave a touching performance in the Oscar-winning drama Terms of Endearment. He became a full-blown movie star as the Rogue Ralph in the adventure comedy Romancing the Stone and its sequel, The Jewel of the Nile. Then came the movie that would forever link him with another larger-than-life actor, Twins, 1988. The concept was pure Hollywood genius. DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger as long-lost twin brothers from a genetic experiment gone wrong. The visual gag was hilarious on its own, but the film worked because of the genuine chemistry and warmth between the two stars. It was a massive box office hit and proved DeVito was a leading man who could carry a movie. But he was never content just being the funny guy. He actively looked for roles that would challenge audiences. In 1992, he gave one of his most daring performances ever as the Penguin in Tim Burton's Batman Returns. This wasn't the campy villain from the old TV show. His Penguin was a grotesque, tragic, and deeply disturbing figure, a monster cast out by society and driven by a lifetime of pain. It was a shockingly intense performance, both terrifying and pitiful. It was proof that DeVito was far more than a comedian. He was one of the most fearless actors of his generation. Throughout the 90s, he kept building an incredible resume, starring in films like Get Shorty, L.A. Confidential, and directing and starring in the beloved classic Matilda. The kid from Asbury Park, who was told he didn't have the right look, had become one of the most respected stars in the world, all by having the courage to just be himself. While Danny DeVito's star as an actor was rising, he was simultaneously building a second, equally impressive legacy behind the scenes. Lots of people know his iconic roles, but far fewer know about his huge impact as a producer. The man who helped bring some of the most daring and influential films of the era to the screen. His work as a producer shows his true artistic vision and his commitment to championing unique stories, the very kind of stories that were once denied to him. In 1991, DeVito, his then-wife Rhea Perlman, and producer Michael Schamberg co-founded a production company. They named it Jersey Films, a nod to the place that never left him. Right from the start, Jersey Films wasn't interested in making safe, formulaic blockbusters. Their mission was to find and support bold, independent voices, and to take risks on filmmakers and scripts that the big studios were too scared to touch. Their first major success was a script that had been rejected by every single studio in Hollywood. It was a violent, dialogue-heavy crime story with a jumbled timeline, written and directed by a former video store clerk with only one tiny movie to his name. The director was Quentin Tarantino, and the film was Pulp Fiction. DeVito and his partners saw the genius in Tarantino's script when no one else did. They fought to get it made, and the result was a cultural earthquake. Pulp Fiction completely changed independent film, became a massive hit, and won the top prize at the Cannes Film Festival. It was a huge win for Jersey Films' mission, and that was just the start. The run of films Jersey Films produced in the 90s and 2000s is breathtaking. They produced Get Shorty, a witty crime comedy that was a box office smash. They backed the stylish sci-fi noir Gattaca, a film about genetic discrimination and the triumph of the human spirit, a subject that must have hit close to home for DeVito. Then, in 2000, Jersey Films produced Erin Brockovich. Directed by Steven Soderbergh and starring Julia Roberts, the film told the true story of a single mom who took on a corporate giant. It was a powerful story of an underdog fighting for justice, another theme central to DeVito's own life. The film was a huge success, winning Julia Roberts an Oscar. More importantly, it earned Danny DeVito an Academy Award nomination for Best Picture. The kid who was once told he didn't belong in Hollywood was now being honored by the Academy for producing one of the best films of the year. The list of classics goes on: Garden State, Man on the Moon, Freedom Writers. DeVito wasn't just stamping his name on these films. He was deeply involved, using his influence and artistic instincts to guide these projects to the screen. His work as a producer is the ultimate expression of his journey. He fought his way into the system, and once he was in, he used his power to kick the doors open for other outsiders and unique voices. He became the champion he never had when he was a struggling young actor. This part of his legacy, while less known, is arguably just as important as his work on camera. It shows Danny DeVito wasn't just interested in being a star, he was interested in changing Hollywood itself. In the world of fleeting Hollywood relationships, the bond between Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman is something special. A story of instant connection, lasting love, creative partnership, and ultimately, a friendship that goes beyond the traditional idea of marriage. Their story started long before either of them were famous. On a cold night in January 1971, Rhea Perlman, a young actress, went to see a friend in an off-Broadway play. The play was forgettable, but one of the actors on stage was not. It was a short, stocky guy